Not hearing it, Brendan. Yes.
I'll do it.
Majority Report with Seder. The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite. Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, April 15th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, member of the editorial board at Dissent magazine, worked in the labor movement for 23 years as a strategic campaigner, Richie Selsen, on the Bessemer Amazon Union Drive failure. Also on the program today, House Committee approves DC statehood. The bill will be voted on next week in the House. Meanwhile, the Republicans reportedly to pretend to offer an infrastructure bill to counter Joe Biden's bill. House and Senate Democrats unveil a bill to add 4 justices to the Supreme Court. H.R. 40, a bill to create a reparations process, passes its House committee. And a Texas bill would send parents to prison if they okayed transgender care for their kids. The FEMA funeral program has nearly 1 million calls on day one of its operations. Representative Betsy McCollum introduces legislation to block Israel from using U.S. aid to destroy Palestinian homes. And Romney and Sinema team up to push an $11 minimum wage. The 55-week streak of jobless claims higher than the Great Recession peak ends this week with 576,000 new jobless. And it is debt reveal day. Debt Reveal Day is activists from more than 45 universities across the nation will share their findings and discuss strategies to leverage debtor power into structural transformation of higher education. These institutions will be revealing the amount of debt that they're carrying of their students. Welcome to the program. Sorry about the technical difficulties up front. Joining me as always, Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good job getting through some of those technical glitches. I might have just frozen, so I guess practice makes perfect for you.
Indeed. Yes. No, I
Nothing new to Sam.
Well versed. Yeah, exactly. There we go. Well versed at the well practiced in the technical difficulties, still living in the era of the pandemic and still doing the show differently than optimally. Nevertheless, here we are. It is Thursday, and let's jump right into this clip. I just wanted to point out that we still had 576,000 unemployed who filed for unemployment this week. Still, horrible numbers. But we are down from where we've been on a 55-week streak where unemployment numbers were greater than that of the Great Recession. And I don't want to say that's an achievement, but it is at least a sign that perhaps we have turned the corner. Now, of course, the flip side of that is part of that could be a function of the fact that we have opened up more across the country. And as such, we are seeing surges around the country, including New York, in terms of new infections. And so, the race between the vaccinations and the infections continues. There is the B116, I think it is, strain, and then other variants that are more contagious than I guess they called it the wildfire COVID-19 that we were first subject to in this country. And these numbers are rising, and still it's a problem. And the real question is just, it doesn't seem like we can now slow this train of opening up, but I think they raised the curfew or the closing of bars in New York State to midnight. I haven't been to bars in quite a while, so it's not that big of a deal from my perspective, but it is going to promote more infections.
I don't know when I'll feel comfortable going to a bar. I can't even believe that bars have been open in any capacity at all.
In 6 months, we're going to look back on these like 2 or 3 months, and we're either going to be saying that we dodged a bullet in many respects, or we're going to be saying, like, we should have been able to hold on for another 60 days. And waited until we had hit some type of critical mass in terms of the number of vaccinated. But we shall see. Fortunately, we are not seeing the same. We are seeing an uptick in some instances in deaths, but we are not seeing necessarily the same rate relative to infections. And part of that is because the most vulnerable people in our society, most of them, have gotten vaccinated. So we will have a better sense of that in the coming weeks. In the meantime, in the Senate, we still have confirmation hearings going on for various positions. This was a fun one. Here is the Senate Judiciary hearing, confirmation of Kristen Clark. She is the Assistant Attorney General nominee. And John Cornyn grills her, and he thinks he's got a gotcha here. And apparently the staff at John Cornyn's office, not necessarily...
not the brightest staff in the Senate.
It certainly appears like they don't seem to be very diligent. Here is this exchange. That was quick.
Very quick.
Want to try it again?
Well, maybe there's a misprint, but I'm sure you can clear it up for me. Dating back to your days when in school, when you seemed to argue that African Americans were genetically superior to Caucasians. Is that correct?
No, Senator, that I believe you're referring to an op-ed that I wrote at the age of 19 about the bell curve theory, a racist book that equated DNA with genetics and race. As a Black student at Harvard that time, we took grave offense to this book. It was co-authored by a Harvard professor. We did a number of events to speak out against the book, and this op-ed opened with a satirical reference to the statement that you just noted. Contemporaneous reporting by the campus paper made very clear that this was not a view that I espoused. What I was seeking to do was to hold up a mirror and put one racist theory alongside another to challenge people as to why we were unwilling to wholly reject the racist theory that defined the bell curve book.
So this was satire?
Absolutely, Senator.
Where was that published?
In the student paper, the Harvard Crimson, and there is contemporaneous reporting from that time, from that day, that makes clear that these were not views that I espouse, Senator.
Whoop. Oh, where do I go from here?
We need to have a office meeting, everyone. You got to say, I mean, for a piece of satire to function that well, I don't know when she was in college, but 10, 15.
The Harvard Crimson, ever heard of it?
10, 15, 20 years ago. I don't know when she was in college, but that's pretty impressive to have a piece of satire that is still working 20 years later, 10 years later. It is certainly effective. I think Cornyn saw the absurdity maybe of the bell curve at that point. There's a lot of people, I think, who should be embarrassed about their involvement of the bell curve.
Well, at least her opposition and her protest to a Harvard professor being involved in those writings and authoring it, that has aged incredibly well. What will continue to age well is John Cornyn's look of befuddlement as he shuffles his papers, being like, damn, the cross-examining plan I had for the next few hours kind of out the window. So I'm just going to reiterate, go through my mind. What kind of questions can I ask? What paper was this?
Can I still go through the righteousness that I had planned and the complete offense I was going to take and tie this into Black Lives Matter and the violence on the streets and sort of implied that maybe, look, there's nothing wrong with our policing in this country.
And
can
he
I
wasn't
still
prepared.
do that?
Yeah, he wasn't prepared to kind of nitpick her definition of satire. That would have been Ted Cruz, his Texan counterpart, would have been prepared in that way. John Cornyn isn't as bright, unfortunately, as the swarmy Ted Cruz. Well,
and kudos to her for being prepared for that question. I am familiar with the experience of having written something satirical and having it be held against you. And in my instance, it took a little longer for the truth to win out. But congratulations to
at the
Kristen
hands
Clark.
of a disingenuous right winger each time. It's
Indeed,
some parallels there.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll be talking to Rich Yeselson about the Bessemer Amazon Union Drive. We'll be right back after this. Hey, folks, just a reminder, Sunset Lake CBD, sunsetlakescbd.com. They are having a special 420 sale. Now, Matt was completely wrong, it turns out, about 420. Matt the other day was saying that 420 was about that was the time where it was socially appropriate, apparently, to get high. No, you're wrong, Matt. I'm shocked by this, but it turns out that was the legislation in California to first, I think, legalize or decriminalize pot. That's what I understand now. So wrong, dude. Meanwhile,
I don't know if you're right about this.
It just happened to be 420, or did they name it 420 because that was already an established number in the pot community?
Well, I'll tell you what is an established number in the pot community. That is 30% off for the coupon code 420 at sunsetlakecbd.com. Sunsetlakecbd.com. We've talked about them past. Obviously, they've been sponsoring the show for at least a year at this point. And 30% off of their tinctures, which have been a huge boon to my ability to sleep. Their gummies, their hemp flower, which has been a huge boon to Matt's different smoking practices. Their chocolate fudge, which has been not so much a boon to my willpower, but they have CBD infused chocolate fudge. And they have all sorts of other CBD products. Their products are great. I've told you before, they pesticide free. They use integrated pest management. It's a farm up outside of Burlington that used to exclusively provide dairy to Ben and Jerry's, and now they diversified, and they're a mostly employee-owned company. They just added another employee to the ownership of the company, and between now and April 23rd, if you use code 420, the number 420, for 30% off. They also are introducing CBD dog biscuits. They blended their CBD oil with 3 simple ingredients: peanut butter, pumpkin, and oat flour, to create delicious biscuits designed to comfort your 4-legged friend. The treats each have 5 milligrams of CBD and contain no artificial flavorings or sweeteners. That sounds actually like, it's weird, but I would eat that. I would eat peanut butter and pumpkin and oat flour and CBD.
I'm sure you would.
I would. That sounds actually good. So go to sunsetlakecbd.com. 420 is the coupon code. Get 30% off. All right. I'd like to welcome back to the program Richie Selsen. He is a member of the editorial board of Dissent magazine. He worked in the labor movement for 23 years as a strategic campaigner. And he is returning to this program. I don't know if we see him yet. He is returning to this program. Hi, Rich. How are you?
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Well, I was just about to say that you're returning to this program, and I'm here with Emma Vigland.
Hi, Emma.
There. Hi.
Returning to this program, I think the last time we spoke was about maybe 8 years ago now, about you were writing about fortress unionism, and a very different time in where the unions were at in some respects. In many respects, we have just sort of moved down there, but there's been a lot of different sort of things that have happened since then. And I want to circle back to that as we talk about what happened in Bessemer, but characterize for us. I think we had one of the organizers on this program, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. And there was a hopeful sense. And this was right after I think Biden had spoken out. Characterize for us just like the results, if you will, and then we will take it from there.
So the results were not obviously great. There were about 5,800 members of the unit, which is itself an important thing to discuss, how the unit sort of ballooned from 1,500 at the point when the union first filed its petition for an election to 5,800. And of that 5,800, perhaps 55% voted. There are about 500-600 votes that are still in dispute. Amazon mostly would, either side can challenge those votes. Amazon mostly challenged those, but of those votes that were free and clear, Amazon took about 70%, and pro-union workers took about 30%. So, that's a significant defeat in that there's a minimum requirement from the National Labor Relations Act if a union attempts to get an election that's supervised by the National Labor Relations Board, that they get 30% of the workers in the unit who sign cards and basically say, I'm interested in election. That doesn't commit them to vote for the election. It doesn't commit them to ultimately be a pro-union advocate, but it does say, yes, I'm in favor of an election. So essentially, the pro-union side, ended up at the same 30%. And, again, this is something to discuss in terms of how this all went down. But generally speaking, unions they don't want to just petition for an election with 30%. Obviously, you need 50% plus 1 to win. But beyond that, because of the company tactics, which are, the people who sign the checks have the most influence on workers. And because the field is tilted overwhelmingly on behalf of the employer, it's not a fair fight. Unions generally, organizers I've spoken to generally want 60 to even 70% of workers signing cards before seeking an election.
All right. Well, I want to circle back into that just so that people understand, because I think some of this stuff seems fairly Byzantine for people, and it is in many respects.
Of course.
And we should say that practice of filling out the card to say I am interested in an election, like you say, it commits you to nothing. It just commits you to wanting to have an election. And there was an attempt, I guess it was like 13, 14 years ago, and there was a hope that the incoming Democratic majority in the Senate and House and in having the presidency when Barack Obama came in, that there was going to be a push for card check. And when we hear card check, that would have changed it from I sign a card to say I'm interested in an election to I sign a card to say I want to join the union. And there it's done and over with, because that period of time between we sign the card saying we want an election and the election provides an enormous amount of time for a massive company like Amazon to influence the outcome of the vote. And it's a war of attrition, and necessarily they have more power. And so, but I want to circle back to that, because then the conversation of the PRO Act. So, okay. So you've hinted at this, and when the union did the card, they did the sort of apply for a union, had people sign cards for this election. They thought the unit was one size, and it turned out to be another. Explain to us, what is this? What does a unit mean? And then how? And then walk us through what happened.
Well, a unit means what the National Labor Relations Board deems to be a bargaining unit, meaning bargaining is the key adjective there. In other words, these are workers that have enough in common with each other that when you put them all together, they would constitute an entity that, if they were to affirm the right to unionization, they would be entitled to collective bargaining rights. So that becomes, and this is very standard, this is nothing that Amazon had a superpower about. This is a standard company move. When a union signs up and says, okay, in this case, we have 1,500 workers in the unit as we define it, the company will try to do two things. A, dilute the union, the unit, by claiming many more workers have a right to be in it. In this case, in Amazon's case, they were already hiring an enormous amount of workers to deal with the COVID crisis. I mean, something like, they almost increased by half their number of workers in the United States over the past year of the COVID crisis. So these are effectively, where a lot of these workers were temporary workers, but they have been added all over the country, including Bessemer. Then there can be controversies about who is a supervisor versus who is a supervised employee. I mean, classic example of that is with a charge nurse. Is a charge nurse a supervisor, or is she just like the nurses that she supervised? She's obviously not a part of the management of the hospital, but doesn't mean that she not entitled to be in the bargaining unit. So in this case, Amazon said, look, we have all these people we think, they should be in the unit. In their case, they wanted supervisors to be in the unit. It can go either way. And all these temp workers. So what started out as 1,500, Amazon suit said, no, we've got 5,800, and we need to have a hearing before the National Labor Relations Board to adjudicate all of this. And of course, the purpose of a hearing is to slow everything down even more and create, concern, anxiety, worry among the workers. In other words, no rush to judgment. No, make it bigger, dilute the activists like the organizer you had on your show, dilute their power, because their power in 5,800 is far different than their power with 1,500, and then slow the whole thing down. Let's have a hearing and talk about it. Amazon did this, right out of the playbook. Companies all over the country do it. Obviously, they have more power and sophistication than pretty much any company, with a rare exception. But this is the standard play.
Now,
it was.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious. Was there something specific to the Bessemer facility and just the workforce there that made them more susceptible to these kinds of slowdowns in terms of just Amazon's interference? Was there something about that specific Amazon warehouse that made them vulnerable to these tactics?
I don't think so. I mean, again, you really have to, to be sure, you'd have to really talk to the organizers on the ground and the RWDSU, the Retail and Wholesale Distribution Workers Union that organized it. But I don't think there was anything unique to that unit compared to, like, say, any other Amazon unit, or really probably any other workplace unit that would make them susceptible. The thing is that structurally, the size of the unit changed enormously, and things slowed down. In fact, from what we could tell about that unit, the activists, the people who first got in touch with the organizing union, they're a strong lot. And they probably, in fact, a lot of them, from what you could tell from the reporting on the ground, and also about Amazon, this is a big part of something to discuss here, was really excellent. That's like a silver lining that came out of this. We know a lot more about how Amazon does what it does, and it's the most emblematic company in all of what I called capitalist modernity in a piece I recently wrote in Jacobin. So that's valuable. That's a silver lining here. We wouldn't have had that without this campaign. But, Amazon did what it did and would have done it anywhere, but the actual activists, a lot of them came out of, from what we could tell, other union shops in the area. In fact, some of them were making even more than $15 an hour in other similar places. Amazon, made a big claim, hey, we're at the Bernie Sanders rate. We're at $15 an hour, which was correct, And some of them were in unions. And so the activists themselves really understood their own minds. The difficulty is that the activists themselves, it's not even, who knows? It's not even clear they could have gotten to 50% with 1,500, although that would have been a lot more of a fair fight. We'll never know. But 5,800 changed the dynamic completely.
What is the best practice? And I know the answer to this, at least in terms of what you've written and what Jane McAlevey has written, which you cite in your piece as well. She has a piece in The Nation magazine. The best practices are that when you are faced with that type of, I guess it makes sense to me that, if I'm working at a place and there's 6,000 people who are doing a similar job to me, I wouldn't necessarily, there's no way for me to know that necessarily. I don't know. I'm looking around and particularly from what I understand about working in Amazon, it's I work this aisle and that's it. Every day I work this aisle.
Work.
I have no idea if it's not like we all meet at the commissary at the same time and we get a head
they're
count.
working with robots frequently. They're not even engaging with other human beings. It's very alienating work.
So I understand how they wouldn't, this could come as a surprise, but what is the best practice for union organizers when you find out that a unit is actually 3 times the size, 4 times the size that you thought it was, and that you're already starting with, a limited, a concentration of activists, and the fact that the unit is 3 times the size, you don't necessarily have intel or people on the ground or activists embedded in that other, 3/4 of the unit. What's the best practice at that point?
Well, I don't think there necessarily is a best practice. There's just a strategic analysis that has to be made, sort of a power structure analysis, like evaluating the strength of the union, the strength of the worker activists that support the union versus the strength of the company. And it's more like there's a choice that's put before the union, and that choice happened in this case. And the choice was, you can go to once Amazon says to the National Labor Relations Board, oh, we want a hearing. Oh, this is not 1,500. Oh no, there's 5,800 people here. We can count them and we can show them to you. At that point, the union has a choice. It can go to the hearing and fight that. And then there'll be a delay, obviously, and discussion of that. And weeks go by. And while those weeks are going on, Amazon is incorporating its union busting strategy with group and individual meetings with the union, with the workers. And of course, keep in mind that the union doesn't have the right to go into the shop and sort of set up its own thing. And this would be like as if you had a presidential election. So you had, Biden and Trump, and Biden wasn't allowed to go into like Trump's strongholds. So Biden couldn't go to Florida. Only Trump could support, only Trump could go there, or vice versa. Trump couldn't go to a Biden stronghold. So at that point, the union can either say, okay, we're going to fight this. We're going to try to reduce this number. We'll get it down to whatever they think is. We'll try to get it down to 1,500 again. Or they can say, the delay is our enemy. That's playing on the union, playing on the company's terms. So we're just going to go right into the fight and try to expedite the election as quickly as possible, despite the fact that we're overwhelmed here. And in other words, stipulate to the 5,800, which in this case is what the union did. Or the third choice is, we can't win this one now. Once they move to 5,800, we're doing our power structure analysis. It's awful for the activists. It sucks for us to have to pull back, but we can't win it. We just can't win it. And we're going to withdraw our petition now and try to extend our fight and build more strength and then fight another day. Those were the three choices.
There's also been criticism that I have read in various places. And some people were not on the ground. Some people were who have commented on this, but reporters that I know who are on the ground, like you, or I read, I should say, who are on the ground, say there also wasn't necessarily the groundwork laid in terms of just an appreciation of what the union could do. Now, I know you weren't necessarily there on the ground either.
It wasn't.
And so it's hard. It's hard to assess this. But broadly speaking, do you have a sense of whether this was, to make the decision that they made, which was option 2, I guess, stipulate and go forward. You have to be pretty confident at that point. I mean, because, like you said at the beginning of this interview, most union organizers like to see 60 to 70% of a unit sign those cards. As you wrote in your piece, the idea is that you never gain when you're going up against these other four. You're never going to gain more supporters of the union. You're just going to try and staunch the bleeding of support until you get across the line. And so what can you, I guess, glean in terms of the groundwork that was laid for unionization there?
Well, let me say broadly, it was a new plant. So in other words, it was a year old. I mean, it's about a year old now. I think it was opened up, I think, in March 2020. And so you've got a bunch of new workers. They don't know each other. It's not a quote unquote mature workforce at that plant. So what happens is that, or what apparently happened in this case is you have some activists, they want the union, which is great. Obviously, that's the foundation for everything. Without militant workers who actually want a union, given how hard it is to get one in the United States, more difficult than any other advanced country in the world by far, the most anti-union employer class by far. You have to have that. But when you have a plant where there's a bunch of new workers coming in, they don't know each other, they haven't worked with each other, it's more difficult to sort of pull them together into a cohesive majoritarian unit. Now, having said that, I think that's basically a secondary issue here. I think that becomes, I mean, you know, criticism, whatever, it's fair enough. These are the people I've read, they're all like smart, knowledgeable people inside the union, either inside the labor movement or experts on the labor movement or really smart reporters. But I think that's kind of a sideshow. I think there's two fundamental issues here. One is the one we've discussed. Can you even do this at all once the unit is increased almost fourfold? Like, can you win, basically? And, you know, do you accept delay? Do you go forward as I did and get beaten very badly? Or do you sort of say, better to retreat now and then build strength? Then the second more macro question is, can you organize a company like Amazon when with starting in just one even fairly large warehouse, when there's 110 warehouses in the United States, in 42 states, and there are 750,000, 800,000 workers. And so even at 6,000, most of the temps will say, that's under 1% of the entire workforce of Amazon. So can you even do it this way? I mean, that's what the eminent, like the most eminent labor historian in the United States, one of the great historians, period, Nelson Lichtenstein, called trench warfare, quote unquote, in my home journal of dissent. So can you do trench warfare? In other words, if we're sort of talking about how they pull the unit together, we're talking about the nuances of trench warfare. And maybe trench warfare isn't even, I believe trench warfare isn't even the way to think about this.
All right, so this is an important point because you cited in your piece the Flint, the famous Flint, Michigan strike, which essentially unionized GM, and you compared and contrast based upon the number of workers at the Flint, Michigan plant in terms of what they represented. GM had the same sort of percentage equivalent roughly, to Amazon, roughly, but their concentration of their workers was far more concentrated in 4 or 5 or 6 different places. And so when you unionized one shop, you have unionized a massive percentage, relatively speaking, to their entire workforce, and that fundamentally alters the equation. And so why is it harder to work? I mean, it may seem obvious to you, but I don't know if it is to most folks. Why is trench warfare harder in this instance?
Well, let me just step back very quickly to the GM example, because if anything, I undersold it in the piece, which I regret doing. And this is part of like the brilliance of that strategy, and strategy and figuring out where the leverage points are is crucial for unions, given how difficult it is to pull any of this off in the first place, especially against emblematic companies like GM then or Amazon now. Yes, as I said, that was almost 25% of the total workforce of the company just in a Flint area, several Flint plants. But just as importantly, arguably even more importantly, GM couldn't make cars elsewhere without Flint. In other words, it wasn't just the number of employees. It was that like all the engines for, I think, Chevy cars came out of the Flint plants. It's that most of the tool and die, sort of the template for establishing each car, most of the tool and die work came out of those like interrelated Flint plants. So in other words, they could stop the whole company and control almost 25% of the workers, but also effectively stop the whole company from producing cars there. There isn't one given Amazon warehouse where that's possible. So to answer your subsequent question, you can't leverage the company's distribution of its product with just one plant. And B, you're hoping, and maybe I'm not sure if this is true or not, to be honest, but maybe in the era of social media, there's a possibility this is true. You're sort of hoping that there'll be like a sort of a spread like wildfire effect, where activists in other units will be inspired by the victory in the first unit. But at 110 facilities, and not including the 75 elsewhere, which enables them to keep going all over the world, the 75 other warehouse distribution centers, like to sort of bet on that, I don't think it's a good bet. Like, I understand the activists on the ground want that, and that's why it's a complicated equation for the union and for the labor movement generally. So I'm not being particularly critical. I'm just saying this is a very hard calculation to make, and I don't think you can pull it off doing like trench warfare. Okay, we've got Bessemer, and now we move to Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I don't know if there's one there.
Right.
And now we move to Omaha, Nebraska, and I don't think that's a likely effective strategy. Let me put it that way.
So how do you establish a national strategy then, right? Where there's coordination? Is it the difference in the union representation, or, what, like a stronger, like larger national union, or what is it?
Well, sure. I mean, that helps. I mean, with the UAW in 1936, 37 in Flint, the UAW itself was very small at that time. It had maybe 25,000 members, 30,000 members, but it had the United Mine Workers Union of John L. Lewis and the about to be newly formed CIO unions behind them. And John L. Lewis didn't just have a lot of clout through the mine workers, who really were fully organized and controlled 60% of the energy in the country at that point, which is far cry from what coal mining does today. But he had a bank, the National Bank of Washington, and he had a lot of money to spend on organizers and all that. So they had that. So sure, one part of it is you need like a kind of a really large union, probably a strategically savvy union. Obviously, the full support of the rest of the labor movement, to the extent that's possible, the logistics of that, where the unions have to work together on this common project. But then you also need, and again, this speaks to, again, the Flint GM comparison, you need to understand the leverage points. So there's like a top-down strategy. So you also need to have, in other words, people looking at like the whole company business model. Like where is the company vulnerable in a regulatory sense? Where is the company vulnerable legislatively? Where is bad, just intense media scrutiny, which I think can be overestimated in terms of its impact on people who are just determined to block unions, because they can ride out a lot of bad publicity, as opposed to things that really concretely cost them money or stop production, like in the Flint example. But still, where is like constant scrutiny for a branded product like Amazon essentially is? The Amazon brand is essential. Like, where is bad publicity there actually going to like have a national effect? And then you're trying to like sort of do what's described as an air war and a ground war at the same time. Where Bessemer was clearly an example of the ground war.
Right.
But you have this air war, and then you hope that, sure, there'll be activists in facilities all over the country, so your ground war also expands.
I mean, the point of Amazon not having basically a linear supply line in the way it structures its business, where GM did, and in fact we had a guest on, a couple of guests on a couple of years ago. I've cited this book many times, called Wrecked, which talked about how the car industry specifically went to change their supply lines to more like on-demand supplies, as opposed to for that very reason, to disempower a small shop from shutting down the entire production line.
Right. Or even a large shop like Flint.
Or a large shop, but you know, you don't want some outfit that employs 15 people and making ball bearings that if they stop, your whole production stops. And so and of course, by then, the UAW had already organized GM. So, you know, then you're just talking about how effective strikes are. But the organization had been done. In this case, of course, the challenge is to even get in the door and organize. So I want to just sort of like, so if that's the case, I mean, if trying to figure out like where it is, like what group of people could be unionized that could actually seriously handicap Amazon's business model, at least, you know, not the servers, maybe the servers, that's where they make a lot of their money, particularly before this past year, frankly. I want to just turn to another thing that you sort of touched on in your piece, which was that we have laborism without the labor. And it's talking about what, you know, on the same day that I talked about Bessemer, the tech people at the New York Times had unionized or had talked about the Brookings Institute had unionized. Right. And that's great. But it's also like, as you write in your piece, that's not enough. But is there, like, how important is this sort of like quasi white collar unionization, you know, in terms of, because if I want to shut down Amazon, I'm going to do it. I'm going to like stop servicing their servers. I'm not going to do any of the sort of, I imagine the tremendous amount of like, work that has to go on to make the site function. I mean, if I want to shut them down in that way, right? Right.
So a couple of things. The laborism issue. Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about and I've written about for 5, 6, 7 years now. And essentially, I do believe it's ideologically very important. I mean, in fact, you could argue that the Biden video, which I think is a very important document, FDR never came close to ever affirming unionism in that way. There were like apocryphal statements attributed to him, but he never did anything like that. And that video, because of modern technology, can be used in organizing campaigns as long as Biden is president. It went way beyond Bessemer. It affirmed the right of industrial democracy, workers choosing their right to self-organize. But what you've got is, right, people like yourself, like me, like all of us, not all of us, but many people probably watching this, who are, you know, mostly urban, mostly cosmopolitan, mostly college educated or more. And post the 2008 recession, frequently youngish. And post the 2008 recession, these folks felt like they're being squeezed in the new media. They're being squeezed in academia and in nonprofits. And they start to both affirm unions as an ideological commitment, like unionism, labor is good, but also saying in our own workplaces, and that's where everybody starts. There's nothing wrong with that. Your own workplace, we're going to organize. The thing is, like the Brookings example is a classic one. Like Brookings, those workers were actually citing reports against Brookings that Brookings had written supporting unions. So they're saying, hey, you guys, hey, you eggheads here, you intellectuals, actually we're intellectuals too, but that's fine. We're all eggheads here. You guys are supporting unions. Hey, but don't you do that for your own shop? Don't you do that for this workplace? That's obviously not something that the average Amazon worker can do, or the average at the Amazon workplace. That's not something, in other words, that kind of jujitsu, rhetorical and ideological jujitsu, most workers can't pull off. So like on one hand, it's a very important thing. On the other hand, you might be right about the servers, but broadly, you have to sort of think what could pressure them. That could be one thing. Again, Nelson Lichtensteiner, I mentioned before, the Washington Post piece I linked to about antitrust action. against Amazon, comparing it to what happened with A&P during the New Deal era and beyond in the 1940s, basically saying, hey, basically Congress people sort of saying, oh, A&P is basically screwing local shops, local markets, local stores by pricing them out of the market because the local stores can compete with A&P. So so then the unions get involved and sort of say, hey, here's the deal. You either get your whole company busted and decomposed by Wright Patman and the congressional people on his side in Congress, or you organize unions with us. And then we the unions will actually oppose the antitrust actions in return. So the workers got organized, and A&P kept its not a monopoly, oligopoly. So in other words, that's a kind of laborism too. It's basically like an ideological advance guard, and bless them, this is great. They're workers too, of more cosmopolitan, more urban, more educated workers, the graduate students at Harvard, the New Yorker writers, or New Yorker editors, I guess, and editorial assistants are organizing. I mean, these are the kind of shops, as you say, Times High Tech. It's just different than GM in 1930 or United Steel in 1936, 37, or Amazon or Walmart today. They're just not, or FedEx. They're just not enormous enough to have weight in the economy, but there's still tremendous value in what they're doing, I think.
Give us a sense of now, like, okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the positives that have come out of this Bessemer thing, and let's talk about the PRO Act. And I mean, I think a lot of people are saying like this, at the very least, this shows why you need a PRO Act. I don't know that the PRO Act would have made a difference in this specific case, but
it would have.
It would have. So, yes, I mean,
it absolutely would have, because Amazon would not have had the right even to go to the board to challenge the size of the unit. In fact, Amazon, the employers are cut out. The original intent of the National Labor Relations Act, and then it was revised in an anti-union direction by Taft-Hartley in 1947. The original intent in 1935 was that this is workers self-organizing. This is their organization. Like the Chamber of Commerce is the company's organization. Like, companies don't have a right to even interfere. So they wouldn't have been able to interfere. They wouldn't have been able to argue that the size of the unit is 4 times. There would have been, according to the PRO Act, like they would have considered it. The board would have considered the union's petition in like 8 days, I think. And then there would have been a vote really quickly. I don't even know if the union could have won that vote. Maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't have. But there wouldn't have been all this anti-union captive audience meetings, all the stuff that Amazon did and companies do. It just really would have happened really quickly.
You can't even requisition the $25 million that they were going to spend in 8 days, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, right, exactly. So it would have had an enormous effect. The question is how to do it when you don't have a mass upsurge from the rank and file, the way what happened in 1934 led to the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, which, by the way, FDR was totally reluctant about. He had blocked it in the middle of 1934. This was like an unclear thing. Is this going to help me? I don't know. I'm not crazy about unions. But then all hell broke loose. There's a huge strike wave, militant strike wave, including deaths. I mean, San Francisco had a general strike. 4 people died. 50,000 workers went through the streets, which is a lot of workers back then in San Francisco, with the caskets. Okay, huge fights all over. Ohio, Minnesota, truckers. So that pushed Congress and FDR off of his ledge. And so I said, yeah, okay, I'll let this go through and sign it in 35. So we're not going to have that this time. I feel safe in predicting. So I have to figure out a way, and sort of laborism is the way, sort of policy entrepreneurs who are kind of laborious, who sort of pushed Biden to do what he did, to sort of get to 50 Dems. And then we're now short, I think, 4 or 5. to pass the PRO Act. So the plus here, to get back to that point you're making, the plus is, yes, all this coverage. It's true. That's why it's a complicated question regarding what the union strategy. It's true if the union had pulled back, which I think on balance they should have done, because I think defeats beget defeat. But the plus side of them not doing it is that we got all this incredible coverage by media, both mainstream and leftist media, about Amazon and about these workplaces. And that coverage may help drive the PRO Act forward. So who knows? Maybe this terrible defeat will lead to something bad. I tend to think that terrible defeats are terrible defeats until something good happens, but maybe something good will happen out of this.
I mean, like you say, the Biden video is going to be deployed at various times throughout the year, and it could have
absolutely
been that, the context surrounding Amazon. You know, when Jeff Bezos, I know he's not necessarily the chairman now, but when he comes out and he's, you know, I can't even remember how many billions of dollars he's made over the past year.
I think it's like 110 to 180 or something like that, maybe 70 billion, I think.
I mean,
who knows? Who's counting?
Exactly at that point. Well, I mean, is there, we just have a couple minutes here, but is there anything that Biden can do short? I mean, like, are there not stuff he could do, executive action, that would at the very least, maybe, I don't know, PRO Act light?
He can do stuff. I don't think this speaks to a larger issue, but it would be a tremendous model, and it would help several million workers. This is something that labor has sought for about 10 years now. He can do something with companies who have contracts with the federal government,
right?
Which I think involves about 3 million workers, but I might be totally wrong about that, so I have to be confirmed. But obviously that's not every company, but it's a lot of companies. I mean, he can basically say that these companies have to be neutral, not fight unionization. Like, let their, come up with in order to get a union contract, a contract from the federal government, to do business with the federal government, they have to permit unionization. In other words, they can't mandate it, but they have to let their voters, free of fear and favor, try it. So no captive audience meetings, no delay, no try to leverage it, no telling the workers constantly, even having bathroom messages in their face that the union sucks. He can do that. Those are executive orders that we know are before Biden's people. They were before Obama's people,
right,
years ago. And somebody like Jared Bernstein, who's a key advisor to Biden both then and now, understands that stuff well. I think Ron Klain, who's been great in terms of working with the left, is probably the most powerful White House chief of staff since James Baker, understands that. So that's a key thing he can do. But the big thing is to leverage the PRO Act. Now he's trying to get the PRO Act to come through the infrastructure stuff. So that's attached to the infrastructure. I don't know if the parliamentarian will let that happen, but that was actually a pretty clever move, because then you only need 50 to pass the whole thing. And is Joe Manchin really good? Who is not a sponsor, by the way, West Virginia Joe,
The only senator or Democrat.
I don't think that's, technically, what I've read, I think there's 4. I think Angus King also isn't. I think Sinema isn't. We'll have to check. I think there's 4 or 5, but they're almost there, but not quite. But yes, he's one of them for sure.
And Kelly. Well, all right, listen, we're out of time, but Richie
and
Selsen,
Kelly, yes.
The piece is in Jacobin. We will link to that at majority.fm. Really appreciate your taking the time to walk us through this. And hopefully we'll have you on sooner than 8 years from now.
Yeah, we still have to go back to Fortress Unionism.
I know.
Sam. We'll do that in 2029. So
fair enough.
All
right. We got to take a quick break. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Okay, well, that's I would encourage you to read that piece in the Jacobin. Also, Jane McAlevey has a piece in the Nation, also worth reading. And of course, you can read Mike Elk. He has a great newsletter where he goes on the ground for a lot of these type of strikes. It's called Payday. You can Google that. Maybe we'll put a link to that as well. All of these great resources to find out more. And that's it for us today. Emma and I will be back, or Emma will not be tomorrow. It'll just be me solo. So Emma, have a great extended weekend.
Thank you.
And we will see you tomorrow. Unless we see you today. And
I have a doctor's appointment. It's not even that fun. Although my birthday is Sunday, so I just figured
what better way to celebrate your birthday than go see the doctor?
It's my annual checkup. Fun times.
Yeah, that's the way you remember that you have it. It's right near your birthday.
I honestly, that's exactly how I do it. So
seriously?
That's, I mean, it's a long story. My doctor's in New Jersey. I got to go to New Jersey for it. And so I scheduled around my birthday because if my mom doesn't see me around my birthday, she gets sad. So.
Oh, I understand. I can understand that as a parent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're going to head into the fun half. And just a reminder, it is your support, folks, that keeps the show alive. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you get the show, you support the free show. You get the free show free of commercials. And then you also get access to the fun half today, which is going to be featuring Old Matt is going to show up for the fun half. And so make sure you check that out. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And the AM Quickie every morning. Check out the headlines, 7 minutes. You will know everything you need to know for the day. Check out Nomi Show, the Nomiki Show on YouTube, youtube.com/the Nomiki Show, or twitch.tv, the _Nomiki _show. Really just rolls off the tongue. And so check that out. Old Matt, what's the latest?
No mic, Old Matt.
You have switched into the non-audio version of your show. Is that the latest?
Oh my God, this is like, it's contagious today.
He's now bringing mime to Twitch, I think.
Yeah, well, folks, check out Doomed. Stick around. Matt will figure out his audio issues at the break. But this is a good time if anybody wants to say anything to Matt.
No,
doesn't
Matt.
want to
Nope.
back talk.
Still no.
New Matt, what is happening in the Matt Leckian audio universe? Because Matt Leck is able to actually deliver some sound.
Yeah, tonight on Left Reckoning, Cale Brooks, Jacobin video editor, ongoing from posting to politics. And also on that theme, the makers of the Reclaim Idaho documentary on Medicaid expansion in Idaho. We're going to be talking about that. Great story that one of the positive stories from the last 4 years that will really get your spirits up. So check that out tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, Left Reckoning YouTube channel. Go subscribe.
Old Matt?
About now.
There you go. What's
There we
happening,
go.
Old
Perfect.
Matt?
Well, hello, Sam and Emma and Matt and Brendan. Tonight at youtube.com/Matt Binder, I will be doing a live stream with David Bixenspan, who brings us the news about, and wait for this, it's going to be shocking, yet another WWE wrestler brought into this world of far-right politics. But this time it gets even more interesting, where a former WWE wrestler turned mayor in Florida has now been wrapped up in this whole Matt Gaetz scandal. It is quite an interesting story, and I will bring it to you tonight at youtube.com/Matt Binder. And if you don't catch the live version of the show, you can catch the audio version of the podcast shortly after at doomedpod.com.
There you go, folks. All right. These guys are going to head into the fun half. I will be back tomorrow. See you then.
left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Hello, everybody. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. How about you, Matt?
I'm doing all right. I should take this opportunity to give everyone I work with at Mashable and Ziff Davis Company as a whole a shout out because our union walked off the job today in order to fight for fair wages. So I just wanted to mention that. If you'd like, you go to I retweeted a tweet from the union's Twitter account. If you'd like to find out more, at Matt Binder is my Twitter profile. So I just wanted to say solidarity to all the union members out there.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Very cool.
So what do you think we should get to first today? Is Emma not here right now? Did she disappear?
She'll be back soon, I'm sure.
All right. So let's get to, let's take a call, right? Let's jump
I
right
heard
in.
all of that. I was putting my earpiece in a
Okay.
very
No, just
inartful
making
way.
sure.
Yeah,
let's-
whenever I'm in this seat, I need you to take the calls just going forward. I
No problem.
don't
I
have
just want you to know that from my perspective, you look like you're sitting exactly the same place you were sitting before. So there's really no visible difference to me, but noted.
All right, got it. I'll just let you know.
Let's go to the phones. 647. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's Juan from Toronto. Can you hear me all right?
Hey, Warren from Toronto. I can hear you just fine. Maybe just speak up a little bit, but other than that, what would you like to talk about today?
Okay, how's this?
Much better.
Awesome. First, just want to say solidarity to the Mashable Union. That's really good news to hear, Matt. If you guys are looking for another really good media union, I only caught the last half of the Emma's and Sam's interview, but The Ringer, which is probably one of my favorite like sports outlets, they have they were like bargaining for a year, and they finally got everything ratified. And if you look at that contract, their salary, I think the lowest salary now is $57K. It went up from like $39,000 to $57,000. Like, we're talking big gains. So if you just want like a good example of like a union really working for its employees, I think that's a great example.
Right.
I remember that fight just, you know, because I casually follow what Bill Simmons does and stuff. And yeah, it seems like a massive victory.
Did Bill Simmons step in it? Did he do any anti-union stuff, or was he well
That's my
behaved?
vague recollection, but I really can't speak on that for sure. I don't know if caller, if you
He seems like he could be a bit of a stinker in that regard.
Yeah, I had a vague recollection too, like Emma. I can't really give good details. I know they recognized it right away, but the bargaining trial was for a long time. So that's I won't really speak to that, but I do know they were bargaining for like a good year or so.
Well, shout out to them for accomplishing that.
Right. It's you know, speaking broadly, obviously here, not about any specific company, but it is amazing to me how, like, you know, in a you know, a world where we are now online all the time, and we are all consuming just a massive amount of content online, just how, you know, little regard is put into for all digital media workers, whether we're talking about, you know, writers, video makers, audio creators, graphic designers, animators, you know, the list goes, social media people, you know, the list goes on. It's just like amazing how like the people creating the stuff that we're all like just taking in 24/7 are like, you know, just expected to do it, I guess, with little to and in many cases no pay. And, you know, I'm really glad to see that obviously like the unionization efforts across the industry as a whole, you know, starting to, over these past few years, really starting to flourish. The next step is to get those because there's a whole swath of like freelancers in that world, to get them unionized as well. You know, I know there's been a number of to give you one example, there's been a number of different attempts to unionize YouTube creators over the years. I recall coming across one not too long ago that was completely different from the other ones I came across in the years before that. And it just hasn't gotten through. You know, I guess the disparity here is, you know, obviously there's YouTubers who are making a ton of money and probably have close relationships with YouTube and don't want to rock the boat. And then you have
millions.
And then you have the slew of lower end creators who would benefit from a union, but don't have the power. Well, they have the power of numbers, but they need to get together to use that power first and foremost. And I guess that's what these unions have been trying to do. But unfortunately, they just haven't got into that goal yet.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And it's funny, the segue to social media, it kind of applies to my question today, because it's in regards to a tweet Emma sent that I thought was just like, it's probably one of the most interesting conversations that our generation has about activism. But I thought you had a very like apt, insightful tweet, Emma, where you said something about like 10% of Instagram activism is useful, 90% is just you know, showing morality or something like that,
performing
which
morality.
I pretty much agree with. But
yeah, no, I'm sick
honestly,
of.
It might even be.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say it might even be a bit smaller. Like 5% is good, 95% is just performing morality.
It's also just kind of a quibble I have with the medium. I mean, it's even more narcissistic than Twitter, where you can, I guess, in theory, engage in things. But I really, you know, I don't want to name, you know, whatever. It's just there are a lot of people that seek attention through expressing on Instagram, you know, morality in very performative way. So I said it all there, but it's just it's something I'm observing, and I don't know how helpful it is, because it's for lack of a better term, virtue signaling in order to get engagement on your posts. And then, it'll be like a Black Lives Matter post. And then the next thing is your butt or whatever. So I don't connect with it. And there's something off about it to me.
Yeah. And I guess I'm a bit mixed. Well, I half agree with you, Emma, and I'd just be interested to see maybe if the Matts or Brendan agree or disagree, where for me, I kind of view it in that way too. Like I view social media and a lot of that stuff through a cynical lens. But on the other hand, sometimes I wonder where, like, I guess some people, one argument like against it is that some people, they do the sharing and they think that's enough when there's more work to be done. But to me, the argument against it is like, for some people, is that just the most we get out of them? I guess in a way that does contribute to a culture where even if they are cynically performing it, at the very least, that kind of just sets the, kind of sets the tone of like, okay, like as a culture, this is something we support. And because we do have this mass spread, does that in a way, even if it's like a 1% conversion rate of people posting that who go into activism, would that be like more people to join that?
I think you have to look at it. It's not a mass spread because it's not getting out even to everybody who follows you. These algorithms have these emotional, like sort of affective filters that are only going to show the people who are going to respond well to that stuff. So like I remember a few of these times where people will change their profile picture and I get it is nice for me to see like North Dakotans supporting Black Lives Matter, right? Like, and people that I went to high school with, like, it's good to like just check in where people are, but it really doesn't do anything. It really doesn't. As far as like move the needle on specific issues, because, and I mean, that's another thing with this Idaho, the Medicaid expansion doc, you have to meet people in person. You just have to. That's where the money is. That's how you actually get stuff done politically. And like I don't think there's any point to like really censor people for online activism, but if that's all they're doing, then they're not doing actual work.
Well, that's the thing to me. It's like empty calories. It allows people who are posting like that to feel like they are being impactful through their own narcissism. And I'm really trying not to be cynical here, but it's just without actually doing anything. And that's what that's I guess what rubs me the wrong way.
To look at it at a more optimistic point of view, though, I wonder how many of these people would end up doing anything offline anyway. So is it really that bad that people who would be completely disengaged otherwise do take part in some way? Is them tweeting about it or posting an Instagram photo that gets a bunch of likes with their own community or their own group of friends, is that better than absolutely nothing, like no stand whatsoever? Obviously if someone was going to get, thinks they're doing a lot of the work and would have otherwise gone out there, which I doubt that number is that large if there's even anything significant there. Obviously, that's bad if someone would rather sit home and do nothing and just tweet about it or Instagram about it. But if they weren't going to go out anyway, just maybe moving the needle in their own little bubbles, is that such a bad thing, in the big picture?
It may not be. And, I'm lucky that I got into this career where I can speak my mind. And like, that's, both of us are lucky in that area where, part of what we do is just talk on the internet about these topics. But, anyway, so it's just really more of an observation, less of, this is a dire situation.
I mean, it's a little bit just too, it's fine. Like, it's good. It's better than, like, let's say the internet developed and it turned out like at this point in the internet, everyone's just really racist and sharing like pro-Confederacy stuff, right? Like it's clearly better than that. But like, I just think, especially when you have Facebook showing different Exxon ads to people, showing to liberals, hey, we're a part of a green future, and showing conservatives, hey, we need to stop these energy regulations. Like, I just think it's really the sort of bite of it has really been neutered by these companies.
Right. Yeah. No, that's totally fair. And I guess, come you're saying, Matt, it's like a lot of these, it's like they have that activism, but then when you go into the actual algorithms at the end of the day, especially Facebook, which prides like controversy and disagreement, which is why Ben Shapiro and Dan Bongino and those guys are so big there. It's I guess you could say that damage of who that algorithm puts forward is unfortunately has a greater impact than any of the positive, more social media like slacktivism, which is the term I heard. And I guess just from my perspective, just from like a normie's perspective, is that for me, as someone who always tried to be politically conscious, but who previously had a job that worked a lot of hours before I was in school, I would see that and I would have, again, the exact same opinion as Emma's tweet primarily. But I guess to just make it more hopeful from your guys' perspective is that some of that activism, some of people sharing those things, that's not how I found the Majority Report, but that is how I found better media, left media aligned to that. And because I find that left media, especially now in Canada, in the United States, is a lot better at talking about action, whereas like even liberal media, that's even in favor of, let's say, a good policy, like in Canada, expanding pharmacare, or for you guys, Medicare for all, it's that strict electoral focus. Whereas I find that left media is talking more about the direct action, or even electorally, like how many left people were like canvassing from Bernie. And I think just that example, it made me go, it's like, okay, like what am I going to do? And I'm a freelance writer on the side. It's like, all right, like now it's like, I used to write like mostly like humor articles and just like tech articles and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, like now let me get a lot more political. And because of you guys, it's like, all right, let me write about like, like the immigration system, which is not good to Filipino people at all. Let me write about mental health in the legal industry, but let me tie that to like capitalism, because they can hire way more people. But so it's on that level. That's why, at least for me, when it gets to you guys, Majority Report, like it does help inspire action. But as you guys were saying, it's a few leaps, and most of it is just like slightly positive, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's give and take, and then we can wrap up. But there's give and take on the positives, right? Like, it's a rich time for material about, say, like the history of socialism, right? You can have access that stuff in a way that even 10 years ago you couldn't. At the same time, like we're not local news is just decimated. There, like coverage of local business corruption or whatever is just not just doesn't have the capacity for what it used to have. So, but like you said, like we have to take advantage of where there's opportunities, and that's when there are things like this. I think it's better to not come in with your cynicism and say like, hey, like I'm a leftist and actually all you people are doing it wrong, but kind of end it and say, okay, yes, this is this, but also, capitalism, which would be my shorthand for it.
Thanks for the call,
Awesome.
Juan.
All right, thanks,
really
guys.
appreciate it.
Yeah, have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Do you guys want to get to this clip? Because I think it's, it is fantastic to see two wonderful people going at it, by 200 people, I mean two people who we love to dunk on. Going at it. All right. So what was this? Was this just yesterday? Geez, time just doesn't exist anymore, does it? This could have happened 10 weeks ago. It could have happened just 2 hours ago. I don't even know anymore. But anyway, so yesterday, Geraldo Rivera and Dan Bongino were on Fox News for a nice friendly chat. And by nice friendly chat, I mean literally gloves off, all hell breaking loose, blow to blow showdown between the two of them on cable news live for your enjoyment. Let's take a look at just part of that moment right now.
I need like boxing ring
Where is some of this
sound effects. Go on.
Right. We need the graphics.
Where
too,
is some
like
of
the
this
ring
massive
falling
body
down.
count we would see?
This man,
He's just
Sean,
making
this man
up.
is
He
why
has
they have that
no
rage.
Data
This
to back
man
it
with
up.
this baloney.
He doesn't know
this
anything
is
about
baloney.
that woman.
He doesn't know anything
about that woman. Anything. He's injecting
Mr.
race
She's a murderer.
because he has nothing
Mr.
else.
Rhetoric.
That's why.
Right. You tell that to the black families that see their sons being killed.
That's all you
twice
got.
the rate
you
of
got
white
nothing else,
sons.
buddy.
That's
got
a
nothing
fact.
else.
That's a fact.
You've got nothing
That's
else.
the
All
fact.
you want to
That
do
the
is
fact.
see the country
That is
burn. You just want to see the country burn. That's it.
I want to see
Every
the
time.
country burn. You son of a
Race.
bitch. I want to
You're
see the
making a
country
race
burn. You
war out of
punk. You're nothing but a punk.
Yeah.
You're a punk, Bongino. You're a punk.
You wouldn't tell me that to my face.
We'll leave it there. Coming
Yeah,
up, the left
let's
continues to sow division with their inflammatory racial rhetoric. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, he reacts next. We'll also cover what's going on live in Minnesota.
Is he trying to say that Geraldo Rivera would not be tough enough to take on Bongino? Because I've seen those shirtless photos of Geraldo Rivera. He's in shape for his age. He could take on Bongino.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Real
it would
missed
be
opportunity. He lost it a little at the end when he went for the, I guess, more take it outside rhetoric, but he obviously had the moral upper hand on Bongino.
right. And for anyone who isn't sure what they're talking about, because they really were just right on top of each other, words over words. Basically, and this might be surprising, but Rivera with a woke take, I guess you can say. And Bongino basically saying that, defending the police officer who shot and killed Dante Wright in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, and Bongino, for people who haven't heard, is kind of the heir apparent to Rush Limbaugh. Is that correct? Right? He's getting millions of dollars.
Yes, he's
to
getting
take
the
over.
slot.
Yeah,
Yep.
great.
Well,
So
Bongino is a former cop. He was a cop for, and I think there was another portion in that debate between him and Rivera where Rivera just said something like, "You think you know better because you were a cop for 10 minutes or something like that." So he had a very short career as a cop, and then he ran for office about, I don't even know how many times, a lot of times, and lost each and every time. And I guess I'll give you his whole career trajectory here, the summarized version. And then the reason we all know him today is because the NRA decided to hire him when they had a TV channel before they lost all their money and went under pretty much. And he was like the breakout host of NRA TV.
The best part of his career, honestly, was helping sink and drive the NRA into bankruptcy.
Right. They paid him a lot of money. They paid him a lot of money. Like they paid him millions of dollars, if I recall reading. Obviously millions of dollars, which they did not have.
yeah, Dana Loesch too, right? Why were they paying all of these propagandists? It just
There-
seems like a
There's a great long form feature in the New Yorker from like 5 years ago when these lawsuits started about their subcontracting like a marketing company in Omaha who only had the NRA account and just used it as like a slush fund.
yeah. Turns out the NRA folks not fiscally responsible. Who knew?
Yeah, I know. Jeez.
But Geraldo Rivera has had kind of takes like this before, where he's stepped into reasonableness. This isn't the first time, so I guess
Right.
I'm not shocked about it. I guess I am shocked about how passionate he was about it. But again, speaking of, we sometimes have Alex from New York, I believe, call in about Fight Club between two right wingers. I would be down to see that.
Right.
Geraldo versus Dan.
Right. I think that they could make a lot of money actually if they wanted to do that. If they wanted to do one of those celebrity boxing fights, I would pay to see Geraldo versus.
I hate to say it because I'd be going for Geraldo, but Bongino would kick his ass.
No, I know. I just think Geraldo would make it a little more interesting. And Geraldo's in his 70s, right?
Yeah, he's
So-
an old guy.
Yeah, but that's just I don't remember the context of why those like weird photos of him leaked. Does anyone remember that?
No, but my guess would be is that he wanted them
Oh
to.
no, he posted them. He posted them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's odd.
It was like a mirror photo, and he posted it on Twitter to celebrate his birthday, or if it wasn't his birthday, just to celebrate his physique at the age he was at, or something like that. He was like, he was looking for those likes and for those those comments, and he put it out there
Incredibly
himself.
thirsty of him.
This gives me one quick opportunity to play one of my favorite Conor O'Malley clips where I'll just.
This a fucking Bentley? Yeah. How'd you get the money for it?
Well, I'm old.
You are? How old?
69, 69, 69, 69, 69, 69, 69, 69, 69, 69, 69, 69.
You're a pimp. You're a player. You're a player. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What do they drive?
Escalade.
Dude, you gotta be kidding me. Come on. Escalade? Wait a minute. Okay. Pop quiz. Who's your favorite rapper?
Me?
Yeah.
Me? Who else is this guy talking to?
Eminem.
Oh, of course.
Ah.
Oh, God.
I also want to say, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nick Lutzko on Twitter. He makes a lot of really funny like parody and political songs.
Yes, the Dan Bongino song.
And yeah, the second Geraldo said Dan Bongino on Fox, like the cadence in his voice, the way he said it, sounded just like when Nick Lutzko says Dan Bongino in that song about how he wants to go to the RNC with Dan Bongino.
Thank you.
You mean the summer hit of 2020?
Yeah.
It's going to be stuck in my head all day.
For a second, I thought Brendan was going to cue it up. Do you have that ready to go, Brendan?
I don't know, but that record is great. You should go buy it on Bandcamp.
Oh, man.
I'm going to get into this Tucker clip because...
let's do it. Let's do it.
So, marijuana increasingly legal throughout the country. I believe 16 states at this point. New Mexico followed New York. Very excited about the New York legalization front. Tucker had to have his favorite science guest, who's been dubbed the pandemic's wrongest man because he has been wrong every step of the way about the science behind COVID. People forget, though, before he was habitually wrong about COVID on cable news for right-wingers' pleasure, he was a marijuana fearmonger. And he went back to his roots on Tucker's second program yesterday.
Community will acknowledge that cannabis can cause a fair number of people, especially if you use heavily, to have kind of short-term psychotic reactions, right? A bad trip.
But they're peaceful, though, because marijuana makes you peaceful.
Yeah.
It's the Mahatma Gandhi drug.
That's right. That's right. That's why violence has gone down so much in the United States in the last 5 years.
So you think that there is, I mean, I'm just being completely honest. I grew up in Southern California. I smoked marijuana.
So Tucker says marijuana makes you peaceful. Then Berenson just casually throws out, oh, well, more, as if more people are using marijuana. You know, I don't have the statistics, but he's casually linking the fact that there has been a lack of peace in the country to marijuana use.
First of all, there hasn't been apart from like major protests and things like that, the crime rate overall is down and is on a downward trajectory.
Violent crime has been down,
going down.
Yeah,
right. That's what I mean.
Yes, exactly. It's been going down for decades. Continue though. I just had to point that out.
In the United States in the last 5 years.
So you think that there is, I mean, I'm just being completely honest. I grew up in Southern California. I smoked marijuana as a child. Everyone I knew believed that it mellowed you out. So you're saying there's evidence of the opposite.
Oh yeah, so this is
also just pause it again. The everyone believed it mellowed you out is again like contrary to the history of mainstream media messaging in this country on marijuana, which is that it makes you scary and dangerous, particularly if you're black, right?
Reefer madness.
Exactly.
Reefer madness. but for little nice white kids in Southern California like Tucker, that wasn't the reaction that his body would have.
So you're saying there's evidence of the opposite.
Oh yeah, there's something called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. Okay, what that basically means is uncontrolled vomiting as a result of THC use.
Yes, I've seen.
Now, cannabis is supposed to settle your stomach. You know, if you're nauseated, smoke some, right? That was sort of one of the famous uses.
Way more people than vomit.
For chemo patients.
The best hangover cure ever.
But it looks like there's this paradoxical effect if you use too much of it, that for whatever reason somehow it resets the receptors in the brain for some people, and they have this just terrible uncontrolled vomiting that in some cases can actually kill. There's I'm not exaggerating, because you become so dehydrated, it can kill you if you're not careful, if you don't get to an emergency.
Not has.
Drinking too much water can kill you.
So paradoxically, so in the short term, marijuana can reduce anxiety, certainly, and it can get you high. But like most anti-anxiety drugs, you can have bad rebound anxiety if you try to quit. I mean, that's true of benzodiazepines too. That's a known risk. Okay.
Yes.
Further,
it's benzos
cannabis
now.
has this effect on people where it makes them paranoid. Some people, some of the time. Okay. And if you have this predisposition, or if you're sliding into mental illness and you start smoking a lot, you may sort of temporarily muffle that anxiety at the cost of your paranoid symptoms getting worse.
That part is, I mean, there's so much to dissect there.
You know what's amazing? That's the first thought coming to my mind here at the end here, while Tucker heralds this. This is a guy who just a couple of weeks ago was talking about how he went searching for QAnon and just could not find it anywhere. There's no such thing as QAnon to him. There's no website. There's nothing. There's no proof to him that there's QAnon. Probably one of the biggest affliction facing the Republican base, if you want to talk about spiraling off into paranoia and mental illness. We're talking about no drugs necessary, no consumption of anything but what they're reading off their computer necessary to make people so delusional that they think that there is a global child trafficking scheme run by satanic cannibals, who are in Hollywood, who are in the Democratic Party, everywhere, obviously, but Trump and all of Trump's friends, obviously. They're defending Matt Gaetz, the QAnon people, by the way. That's just astounding to me that, Tucker's sitting here eating this all up, but an actual example of affliction of that very thing to the people who watch his program just didn't exist.
I just want to say, like, the important thing to know about propaganda is that it's not about facts, but it's about attitudes you can muster those facts to create. So this is just like the vax stuff. So you focus on these extremely rare bad cases of things that happen to a very small number of people, but you don't contextualize the rarity. So it creates an attitude of fear and skepticism about something. It's the exact same playbook they're taking about vaccines, and it's despicable. Like this is absolutely despicable to be absolutely creating fear and it's not a lie by like just misstating facts. This is lie by emphasis or lie by omission.
Yes.
Right. And that's how they operate. Like, it's not often they just create things out of whole cloth. It's just what you choose to emphasize at any given point. Like, so Tucker, are you going to choose to emphasize like gypsies coming into the country, for instance, right? Like, and Tucker chooses to emphasize everything that's helpful for a fascist agenda in this country.
Oh, well, I mean, okay. Also, I just want to point out, he's just doing, we mentioned Reefer Madness earlier in the clip. Berenson's just doing a new flavor of that. I mean, he connected it to people experiencing mental health struggles and psychosis. I mean, that's just Reefer Madness 2.0. So they're repurposing the same anxieties that are latent in the ancient audience of Fox News viewers from decades past, and that has continued in strains of thought, and making it a little bit more updating that model. And as Matt pointed out in the clip, can you point to an instance where someone smoked so much pot that they vomited and died from dehydration? There's so many cans and ifs and suppositions or whatever it is, like that. None of that ever happened. If Berenson found an actual concrete instance of that happening, he would cite it on that show.
Right. Well, he rarely is able to cite anything, because I can't remember the last time he said something that ended up being truth. I mean, this guy, I get how he gets on Fox News, but it's amazing how this guy has built this name for himself, just being a contrarian on not just like issues where you can have a difference of opinion on. Like, this guy has made a name for himself on constantly being wrong on issues where there's actually like scientific data to back up the complete opposite of what he says. Like, this guy has literally built a name off of being wrong.
But notice he's never wrong in a way that is like pro-worker. It's always wrong in a way that's pro-capitalist. All these issues.
Well, there's no money in siding with the scientific consensus. The money is when you can put out an alternative narrative that feeds into what conservatives want, and then they'll buy your book.
Who's this weed thing even for, honestly? Like
All
at this
conservatives.
point, seriously, that's what
I'm thinking too. Like the Fox News audience doesn't need to be sold this though. Like why are they wasting time on this? Like
Yeah, but you have
there's vaccines they could talk about there. They could win over new people. They got a whole range of different issues that are going to that could win over the crowd. Who maybe not be...
No, it's not just the viewers though. Like the people who need an argument against weed right now are all the governments that want to slow roll it and monopolize it. So like we're going to add and thank God Cuomo, but Cuomo was the perfect example of this. There was this much better weed legalization bill that could have been done, and Cuomo's like, you know what? We need to be careful and prudent about this. We need to make sure that we can trust all these suppliers and all this or that and the other, right? Like that's that's what it's for.
Well, I mean, and luckily the New York law is not even as bad as what we've seen in other states where, like for example, in Florida, they've allowed these cannabis companies that already have all of the capital to just basically buy up all of the available dispensaries. In New York, they're going to leave essentially half of it for smaller growers, but
right. But in the rest of the country, that's the dynamic. It's like Montana, for instance, there's no home grow, and and like only like 5 major companies are licensed to sell, and like that's all done in the name of public safety. So that's who Berenson works for. That's who's really paying his bills now.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just because he's serving capital, and that's where that capital is going to allocate.
Right.
Once
I
legalization
honestly,
rolls out.
That's a great point, Matt, because I was viewing it in the way where it was like, who are they? Like, yeah, their old audience, and I guess cops are the only people who are like staunchly anti-marijuana. Like, you're not going to get young people to agree with you on this, because guess what? A majority of them have tried it and they know that you're lying from firsthand experience. So I mean, this is like one of those most like obvious in your face issues that the hands of time will show that they're on the losing position. There's no doubt in my mind that, give or take a few years, this is going to be something where it's legalized all over the country. But what you're bringing up, Matt, is a great point, because obviously they feel like there's still areas. But here's a question though: will young people fall for that bullshit too? Though, like those laws can't be on the books for that long. The fact that there needs to be these upright corporations, these 5 corporations in Montana who could only do this. Like, no way that lasts.
It'll be too late.
No, like Montana, they legalized it through like a ballot initiative, and then the Republicans just got to write the law. And so it's like, people are upset about it, but what can they do about it? Like, okay, take over the state party or state government of Montana, but how long is that going to take?
All right.
Want to take another call, Matt?
Yeah, let's do another call. Where is this? Here we go. 570. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Thanks, Matt. This is Dave from Scranton. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem, Dave. What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, and this kind of leads back to the first call you took. I can't take what I hear any longer on local airwaves. Yes, we know talk news radio is terrible, including local. It's right wing. I like to think calling in or writing editorials to my newspaper helps. But so instead of starting another YouTube show when there's already the big 3, the Majority Report, Pac-Man, and Tom Hartman. Also, it's something that older and local voters won't find. The people that vote. More AM radio frequencies have been opened up. Maybe start a small local AM show. Target Northeast PA voters. Buy maybe an ad or a billboard. Find partners. Come up with a tagline. Because something needs to be done. Even now, people are still arguing about masks. Repeating the COVID lies, repeating lies about voter ID laws in 43 states by Republicans, and it's on and off the radio. And I know where these lies come from because, I watch your show, I listen to the Enemies Talk on Fox and on YouTube. Sinclair took over 2 of my local news local TV news stations, okay? They're vomiting the right-wing talking points and segments that pretend to come from local people, you know, and local anchors and ideas when it's obviously not. It's all, you know, from a central location that their right-wing lights come from. You know, my local college radio used to broadcast Democracy Now! Until a former, you know, local right-wing radio host took it over and stopped it. I guess she was mad that people heard different ideas. You know, like I said, something needs to be done, you know. And, you know, thanks to gerrymandering, Republicans in PA, you know, and have been in control of this PA state legislature for the last 35 years, even though more people vote Democrat in PA. And people that, you know, like I said, on and off, you know, air, where I hear this in stores and, you know, wherever I go, when I go out, you know, people are still blaming Democrats for, you know, problems that, you know, for 35 years, Republicans have been control over the state with. Something just needs to be done, you know, and that's, you know, that's my point.
Well, first off, I want to say, wow, that's the big three. But my feelings are a little
to me
bit.
It is, you know.
I know, I'm joking. But yeah, I mean, I think you make a good point. I mean, I think the tough, but there are it's, you know, there are some of its advantages. I mean, I'm sure there'll be people who just in the car and would tune into, you know, while flipping through the stations, find your show. But, you know, when you're dealing with, you know, airwaves like that, and you're just some small program, it's a very small, you know, possible.
Right. I would target the area though. That's, you know, that's, you know, that would be my idea. Find partners, because I know other people. You know, I know somebody who tried to get on one of the local news radio. He was too left wing. You know, he's into that. You know, because like I said, I'm just tired of hearing the same lies repeated by people. You know, even, you know, not on radio or on TV. You know, out in public. You know, and like I said, I know where these lies are coming from. It's obvious where they're coming from. You know, it's the same, you know, proud ditto heads.
Right. Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah. It's interesting. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's go take one more call. 989. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, 1 second. This is Chris calling from Michigan.
Hey, Chris, what would you like to talk about?
I got to get outside 1 second. Well,
you driving? You driving or something?
No,
He's
no.
probably
I gotta
getting out of his
get
office.
outside 1 second.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, everyone's doing home, you know, virtual school, virtual office visits.
Right.
And stuff. All right. Yeah, thanks to people on Twitch chat trying to help me get on. I'm on a headset. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Go right ahead.
All right. So the people on Twitch are trying to help me get on because I'm a nurse practitioner, and I was going to talk about Medicare for All a little bit, and just about like from the provider and healthcare worker side, just like how horrible the inefficiencies of the current system are. So, you know, from the patient side, obviously we can all see it fair enough in dealing with cost of prescriptions and visits and diagnostics and all that. But what's not seen is the hours and hours every day wasted by multiple staff people in every office and every hospital trying to work around all the problems with insurance. You know, say you write a medication for a patient, you try to pick the most effective one that you think is most likely to be covered, you send them to the pharmacy with it, you go on to see the next patients, you get calls and messages in the middle of your visits from the pharmacy and from the patient saying, oh, this isn't covered now, even if it was last year, or even if it's cheaper than this other one. So you're constantly having to waste just countless hours trying to like undo and redo your plans of care. You have entire back offices full of billing staff that are processing all your claims. every year each insurance plan and each insurance company can change all their own rules. Like if I order a test, there's different ways to order it and different diagnosis codes to tie it to, and each insurance company might only pay for it if you know which insurance or which diagnosis they require to pay for it. And so you constantly have to try to memorize that. It changes every year, and if you don't put in the right code, then the patient gets a bill that they shouldn't have to pay, and if they don't know enough to call the office to ask you to change the code, then they end up having unnecessary medical bills. You know, I've seen you know, ICU visits or ICU stays that, you know, tens and tens of thousands of dollars of care, all because of insurance company denying to pay for like a $50 a month pill that would have kept that person out of the hospital. You know, you see people that end up dying from stuff like that, where they end up in ICU, maybe they get pneumonia while they're in the hospital, they end up with some other complication, and then they end up dying all because the system is so complicated that you can't get them the care that they need to stay out of the hospital.
There's Chris, have you read the book American Sickness by Elizabeth Rosenthal?
I haven't read the whole thing, but I think I've caught excerpts from time to time when people bring it up. I try to look some up.
Yeah, she talks extensively about billing, medical coding, and that, you know, crisis in the book. And yeah, that's like a common refrain of like all healthcare workers, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is like the amount of time they spend doing clerical work basically on behalf of their patients. It just completely takes them out of, you know, why they got into the industry in the first place.
All right.
Yeah, it's indescribably infuriating, and it's very demoralizing too when like you said, the amount of time that you do, you more time charting and more time trying to jump through all the hoops than actually caring for your patient and being able to listen to them and fully understand their problems. And it's just this endless circus that's all for nothing. You know, it gets pretty frustrating when just like with this last COVID bill, with them doing the COBRA thing, as Sam and you guys have repeatedly said, you know, it's just another big handout to the private insurance companies. You've taken the most expensive approach to do the least effective thing. You know, you've paid for the plan premium for the month for those unemployed people that will qualify, but they're still going to have their deductibles or co-pays. Everything else they're still going to have to pay. And if they're unemployed and barely scraping by as it is, even if you pay for their plan, what good is it if they still can't afford anything at the point of care? You know, and as you guys said, you could have, for infinitely less money, infinitely more efficient, you could have given them temporary Medicare or Medicaid, but obviously that was not the politically appropriate thing for them to do in their minds. So I'm trying to think if there was something else that had been brought up, but I know I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Sorry for the scramble to try to get outside.
It was a great call, Chris. I really appreciate the call in.
Yeah, but yeah, it's you know, I feel like the more that people can understand all the different points of waste and inefficiency, and not only the financial impact, but just all of the unnecessary extra harm to the individual and just wasted money through the system to get a crappier result. It's I don't know, it's such an uphill battle, but we gotta keep fighting for it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Thanks for the call, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Yep, take it easy,
guys. Emma, you had a clip you wanted to get to, right?
A little bit, yeah. So hold on one second. Let me just pull it up right here. So last night, the protests continued in Minnesota at the Brooklyn Center because obviously Dante Wright, the fallout from his murder at the hands of a police officer, is still enraging the community and the country. But there was a moment of levity when one of the protesters spoke with CNN, and I think you'll see why, because it called back to Trump. Remember that guy? Something he had said during the protest last summer.
Yeah. Well, I've been here all 4 nights. I'm just standing here today with soup for my family, and we're just, watching all of this unfold. It's very unfortunate.
You're not planning on using that, are you? Throwing it at the police?
Like I said, it's for my family.
Literally for your family. All right.
And then when they get caught, they say, no, this is soup for my family. They're so innocent. This is soup for my family. It's incredible. And you have people coming over with bags of soup, big bags of soup.
Yeah,
Right.
bags of soup. I mean, I think that might be less impactful than the can, but yeah, protesters decide to arm themselves with non-lethal weapons as cops are regularly using tear gas and rubber bullets, which have maimed and killed people before. So God forbid there's some defenses on behalf of the protesters who are calling for cops not to murder people.
Right. So what-
Countless
Trump
rubber
doesn't-
bullet rounds.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't want people to have soup. I mean, come on. What is he? Some sort of soup Nazi?
I think it's good to bring
one
soup
of
to your
those
family.
things.
I think soup for family is a good. I think everyone should be encouraged to.
That's quite the callback too, because we see this stuff, every day. We've probably seen it all, but like I did not remember soup for my family.
Me neither. I just love the little wink at the camera too. Soup for my family. It just keeps going. And
I like the follow-up question too.
Yeah. Oh, that's soup for your family. Okay. Right. And he didn't break once.
Right. To be fair, and to show how in touch I am nowadays with the youth of America and the Zoomers out there was a very, very viral TikTok video from last summer that went around where these 2 young girls basically enacted out Trump's
Yes.
speech.
It's
with the
been
soup-
it's been
yeah.
recirculating now that video came out. So
Yeah,
that guy's
like it
just a
went-
legend. Yeah.
Right. I hope people it's just as viral because that's a great moment right there.
Oh, it's been going viral. Yes. Totally iconic as the kids say. I don't know. Am I a kid having an existential crisis?
It's all right, Emma. I'm even older than you, so imagine how I feel.
But yeah, it was just like it was a cool moment. Just that guy completely trolling the CNN folks there.
It was funny too when she had to stop and go, wait a minute, you're not really going to use that, right? I get it. She had to watch out for, otherwise people are going to be saying CNN's promoting this individual who dares to get soup for his family. But, she did what she had to do. Do you want to get to that Ben Shapiro clip?
Go for it, Matt.
Oh, boy. So Ben Shapiro, who once floated the idea of, if the sea levels rise and your homes are affected and your home is underwater, no big deal. You could just sell your home, obviously, without thinking of who the hell are you going to sell it to. But that same Ben Shapiro is out with some new takes on climate change and rising sea levels. Let's hear what the conservative genius, the intellectual of the right, Ben Shapiro has to say.
Scientific American has become more and more politicized these days. They openly endorsed Joe Biden for president. It was not a complete shock, but you saw Nature do the same thing. A bunch of these quote-unquote scientific magazines suddenly have a very strong political bent.
When I first saw this clip, I had to pause for a second and I had to forget that Nature is a outlet. And I thought Ben Shapiro was literally saying that Nature, as in Mother Nature, has endorsed Joe Biden over Trump. But continue. It was a moment.
But you saw Nature do the same thing. A bunch of these quote-unquote scientific magazines suddenly have a very strong political bent. Who could have predicted such a thing? Okay, there's a piece in Scientific American in which the magazine announces that they are no longer going to use the term climate change. Instead, they're going to use the term climate emergency. Now, I was not aware that there's a scientific designation that amounts to emergency. There is such a thing in medicine, for example. There's like emergency medicine, right, which is the person's going to die if you don't do something about it right now. But climate emergency, it's not as though a certain level of climate change occurring over the course of the century turns it from just change to emergency. This is a completely political designation. And by the way, I do not consider a quote-unquote emergency.
The political designation, this is basically a long-standing thing scientists have, which is a bit of awkwardness over how they interface with the public over issues. That they've gotten together and decided, oh, we actually can't do what Ben would normally and reactionaries would normally like us to do, which is to stay in our little science labs and keep our opinions to ourselves. We actually have to be a bit more vocal about it because, frankly, the scientific community for all of my adult life and even more than that has been probably too
disengaged.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And too hopeful that, you know, people will just see the science like that. So yeah, exactly.
And who politicized science first? Who did it? If science was not should not be political, then, you know, Republicans should just be listening to the science that's provided if they want to keep it, you know, entirely divorced and like cold in that way. But that's not the case. That's why they have to make that argument.
Right. And to, you know, exactly what you said, and to even strengthen that, you know, the idea that, you know, they hear a scientific fact, Republicans or conservatives, and they automatically view it as political if it goes against what they already believe, because in their world, you know, they're right. So if someone is disagreeing with them, that can't be fact. That's got to be someone pushing their own political agenda for some reason or another. But then to get back to Ben Shapiro's point, what is he talking about? Science has never declared things like an emergency or an urgent situation. We literally talk all the time.
A pandemic.
But even pandemic, obviously, this past year. I mean, my entire childhood, I remember being really interested in the extinction level threats science warned about for certain different species. Like, are you kidding me? Science has never warned about urgencies or emergencies.
They see a volcano and they're just like, oh, ho hum.
The simple truth
is
is
erupting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the simple truth that conservatives are too big of babies to understand is that science has political implications, right? Like, our understanding of carbon has implications for like the political way we've decided to transport, for instance, people around this country and keep the lights on. It's just fact. It's not humans making it political. Exactly. Like politics. To want things not to be political is to be anti-democratic.
It's to be a child.
Right. Let's continue that clip.
Of climate change occurring over the course of the century turns it from just change to emergency. This is a completely political designation. And by the way, I do not consider it a quote-unquote emergency if the climate were to warm 4 degrees Celsius over the course of the next century. I consider that a gradual change that human beings are going to have to adapt to with increased technological know-how, as well as innovation, which human beings have been doing for literally all of the history of humankind. Adaptation, we're really good at it.
Wiping out all of the people in the global south.
He gets butthurt about semantics. Go on.
We've been doing technological innovation for all of humankind. Like, most of the innovation comes from like the past 1,000 years. Like, there was quite a lot of innovation that was not sticking for eons and eons. So like, this idea that humanity just naturally dominates technologically, like, no. That's a religiously fundamentalist faith. That's a faith-based argument.
Well, the race is all of the accomplishments of his favored white race. So I don't know why he's erasing white people. It's a joke.
Also, it'll be fun to see who invents these technological accomplishments and how much they make off of them. You know, when Elon Musk gets a little, makes his finds his technological accomplishment to live in this world changed by the climate emergency, he gonna open up those doors and just let everyone, or are they gonna have to afford it? They're gonna have to pitch in a little to Elon Musk. You know, the idea. You know, ever see that movie Elysium, guys? Like, that's the world Ben Shapiro wants.
Yeah.
Elon's not going to make it either. He's going to get a bunch of government contracts to make it and not actually deliver on the promise of it.
Right. Let's keep hearing from Ben though.
Know-how, as well as innovation, which human beings have been doing for literally all of the history of humankind. Adaptation, we're really good at it. Mitigation, not so much. In any case, Scientific American now says that it is a scientific duty
We
for them
literally
to call
solved
this
the
a climate
ozone
emergency,
crisis.
which is just a lie. It's just a way for them to create a certain level of alarmism that is unjustifiable by the facts on the ground. The fact is the economies
uses
around
so
the
many
world are
filler
growing at such a
phrases.
rapid clip that the amount of
Rapid
damage to
clip.
be done to
Speaking
humankind on the basis of climate change is a small percentage of global GDP on an economic level. And in terms of actual human damage, we should be focused on how to mitigate that human damage, but we are not talking, as so many people have suggested, about billions of people dying or hundreds of millions of people dying or anything like that. We're not even talking about tens of millions of people
just
dying. We're not talking about
millions.
probably millions of people dying
Nope.
through climate change directly.
We are talking
Wow,
about
that didn't sound
displacement.
exactly like what Ben Shapiro said at the beginning of the fucking pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. It won't even be thousands.
We are talking about millions of people dying. He just isn't doing that research or putting that to the forefront. That is a actual conversation about millions of people dying due to increased natural disasters and displacement and disease. That is an actual fact of what like scientists are talking about. So, you know, who's politicizing science now?
I also love how all he thinks about are humans, as if we don't share this earth with thousands and thousands of other species who won't be able to survive. Like, do you want to live in a world without frogs and polar bears and bees? I mean, if you don't care about those things, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter to you, but maybe some people find the beauty in the world that they live in and would like to preserve that.
Well, that's for pussies, frogs. So.
Right. Well, that's because they turned all the frogs gay, remember?
Yeah, well, then the frogs wouldn't be interested in that. Anyway, sorry, gross. Regret it.
Okay,
Regret it.
right.
Regret it.
This one reminds me. I posted a clip on my channel, youtube.com/MattBinder. Late last week, Ben Shapiro ended one of his shows, one of his live streams on Daily Wire. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but he forgot to turn off, or his producers forgot to turn off the stream. So the stream ended and he kept talking to them. And in the clip, he says, apparently earlier in the show, he says, pansexuals are weird. And for some reason, this stuck with him. And at the end of the show, he thinks he's off air. And he turns to his producers and he requests that they cut that line out when they upload it to the show. And then they're like saying, it was a funny bit, Ben. Why do you want to do that? And he goes, you know, I don't want to get boycotted over it. Just amazing. Like, it's not good.
How do you read that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like an earth-shattering reveal, but the idea that like Mr. Cancel Culture Warrior, who stands up for his right to free speech, is secretly telling his producers and his team to cut out things which may cause him problems is pretty interesting to me. I mean, maybe we should go back and recheck all of Ben Shapiro's shows and see what he's requesting be cut out after he, without the filter on. What is he saying once it's, is it that different from when the producers edit the show? Also, he's worried about pansexuals. Like,
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I think it might be a red herring.
I think he planted it.
Yeah.
Or he wanted to get out. Like, I think it's like he's setting like a predicate for him.
I'm
to
so
say,
afraid of cancel culture that I'm afraid.
Actually, if you check out if you look at April and this date, a video was leaked that actually showed me actually being pretty concerned about this. So the thing I said about Muslims being people we should hang, you can actually see I'm actually not somebody like, I think that's what he's doing.
I disagree.
It seems weird because it's like
from? What's the
source? He looks right at the camera, and so does.
It was literally, well, he looks right at the camera, and then that's when it cuts because they realize it's still streaming.
It looked like it was his laptop though, so maybe that's like he's just looking at his screen. Like, how did that come out? Do we know?
It was just on the stream, the Daily Wire stream, and someone who watched it recorded.
You said that, yeah.
Recorded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think that's the case. Because that's such a lame thing to do that for, and I don't think it makes him look good. I think it makes him look corny. Like, he's really worried about things like that. Like his whole thing, the rights whole thing.
It's so weird.
Standing up for their right to say what they want, and they're not going to be beholden to anyone. I mean, there was a whole news cycle about Dr. Seuss being canceled when it was really just the Dr. Seuss organization saying we don't want to publish certain books anymore. Like, Ben Shapiro is literally the same thing. Why would they do that to themselves? I highly doubt I think it's like, it's nothing crazy, he said, but I do think it's an eye-opening look into what these guys are really thinking about and worried about when they're not on air and and pounding their chest and showing off such bravado. I mean, they're just like anybody else who's worried about creating some sort of problem for themselves. I don't think it was planted though.
It's just so bizarre. Like, I don't know why after all the things that guy said, your offhand comment about pansexuals being weird, like it's so like, what's going on in his head?
You know why I think? Because there was nothing behind it. Like in that climate change video we just saw, like he has in his mind an intellectual debate where basically an intellectual conversation where he's defending his beliefs. Whereas that pansexual comment is just that's what I mean. I just always call him that because I will never forget all the headlines and like the Times and everything when he was really gaining his following. And it was like the intellectual firebrand on the right, like the intellectual leader of the conservative movement. Like, give me a break. But for him, like that pansexual comment was below him. There was nothing like if he went on an entire rant explaining why he thinks pansexuals are weird, perhaps he would have left it because in his mind he would have.
But who knows how much he's cut out before? The point
that's
is
what I'm saying. Like to me, that's that's the thing. Like that's the point practice. Of it, right? Like it'd be interesting to go back and see what he's combine. You should compare, I should say, how long the usual live version of Ben Shapiro's show is to the version that goes out via YouTube and podcast or however they cut it up. And see how long that one is. I'll guarantee you.
It's very Jimmy Dore of him to cut out stuff from his live show.
Yeah, it's so weird that anyone does that. When that Dore does that too, like so bizarre to me. If it's on air, it's on air. It's you gotta live with it. I'm sorry. Let's go to the phones. 510. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey Matt, this is Kenny from Berkeley, California. How you doing?
Hey, Kenny from Cali. How you doing? What would you like to talk about today?
So first, I want to weigh in on the 420 origin story. I did a little reading, and I think it dates back to 5 guys in San Rafael, just across the bay from me, who would just go out and smoke at 4:20 p.m. and it caught on. I don't know if that's true or an urban myth, but
yeah, whatever Sam said today was not correct. That like 420 originated.
I don't
with it.
think so.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they
amusing.
just played on the fact that 420 already was.
What did Sam say? I missed that.
It was a part of Sunset Lake and like the CBD ad and Sam just said something about the origins of 420.
He said it was like a bill, right?
He said
it was the original bill to legalize marijuana.
Dude, this is the thing. I've had this conversation like a million times since I've been like 19, and I've heard all these stories, and it's just this endless, endless chain of different urban legends, basically.
I gotta say, speaking as probably the person who consumes most weed in this, maybe I don't know, but do not care at all. Actually.
I don't think for sure, Matt.
I always thought it was because Hitler was a big fan of weed. He was a big pothead, and that's his.
Yeah, I was just reading Alex Berenson's book, and he said that all weed smokers are secret Hitler lovers, and that's why they do it because it's Hitler's birthday.
I don't even care about 420, right? Like, I mean, it's just not. Is that what you're trying to say, Matt? I definitely think you consume more than me, but even when I was.
I mean, it's a nice day and nice time, but I as to the origins, like. It's a lot of just so stories, and which one was first? I gotta say, like
2 days ago, Sam was just talking about how much he hates taxonomy, and now we've been debating this for a week.
Matt, let me ask you: Is 420 all without going into the whole background of it? Is 420 so much like even a thing where potheads actually take do they actually smoke up at 420 every day, or is that just something that's like a myth?
I mean, in high school, it made sense because like you get off around 3:30, and then you get home. By the time you get home, that's when you like can smoke. So there has been times where I've smoked at 4:20, but like, is it a big thing of part of the ritual? No, I'm sure I've smoked at 4:18 and 4:22 plenty of times without noticing that I could have just waited for the exact proper time.
Anything else, caller, or was
So-
that okay? Good.
Yeah, I wanted to mention. So yeah, I didn't just call up for 420. I'm a graduate student here at Berkeley. I'm studying physics, and I'm pretty active in our union. And I just wanted to call up because have you guys reported on the Columbia graduate students workers union? I believe they've been on strike, or maybe they've ceased being on strike recently. I haven't kept up with all of the details, but if you follow them on Twitter, Graduate Workers of Columbia at GWC UAW, they are fighting for things like very basic workers' rights, like establishing just cause as a standard for principal or discharge over job performance. Very simple, straightforward things that should be codified in labor law, but they're not. And to me, it's just kind of a shame that universities, which should be kind of bastions of progressivism in this country, are doing things like union busting and trying to, take away rights and privileges from its workers. It's a sad situation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, same could be said about a lot of organizations and CEOs out there who act woke when it comes to like hiring practices or where they stand on the nationwide conversation on different issues, but when it comes down to the almighty dollar in their own pockets, then it's a completely different situation.
Yes, but I mean, corporations, they're built for the bottom line, right? Like their main goal is to maximize profits. Universities are, at least on paper, not supposed to function that way, but they, in essence, do.
Yes. Thanks for the call, and I'll definitely check that out. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so solidarity and support to Columbia grad students out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll let you go, but it is interesting too. I mean, it's like the academic elite, I just think almost have gotten even more emboldened as the profits of universities and the endowments have gone up, if that makes sense. Like they've become even more cloistered from reality and from academia that makes a difference. It's just like a giant, for lack of a better phrase, I guess I'm vulgar today, circle jerk. So
Yep, very true.
Oh, I'm
All right,
sorry. I
thanks,
thought
guys.
we hung up on you.
Thanks for the call.
Thank
No. We only have a few more minutes here, and so I'll go through some IMs, and that's the show. We got Nug Wrangler. Got my second dose yesterday. I feel like shit, and I'm hearing shofars all over the place, but better than having corona.
For sure.
Married to Mothra. This is a question for you, Emma, because I don't know. How many shows of Bill Simmons have been canceled?
I don't know, and I actually didn't hate his HBO show. A lot of people found it to be awkward because there was like
You liked
monologues. I didn't mind. That's what I'm saying. I didn't mind it as much of other people. As other people. Like I like the interviews. He'd have good interviews with. I remember some. I love.
Do you think he's a good interviewer?
I don't know. I'm just saying I didn't hate it as much as other
What did you
people.
like about it? The set?
He had a good monologue about Serena Williams and her greatness, but he's a little awkward. And was there no studio audience, and yet it was treated as if he was like monologuing to?
It was like Bill Maher without a studio audience, and then like, yeah, I don't know, like the writers from The Ringer who weren't in a union or something.
Brennan, it was like how many years ago was it? I don't
4 or
remember.
5. I only know this because a woman I worked with EP'd that show, and I was like, how did she get another one of these jobs? Well,
Is it such an accomplishment though to herald Serena Williams? I mean, I'm not even a big tennis fan, and I know she's like the absolute best at what she does. Like anyone, I think, could have.
a good monologue there, Matt. We gotta get you an HBO show.
Yeah, I mean,
there you
right
go.
there. You know what I mean? Like,
It got
I want to
canceled
say,
like, real quick.
all fans of The Ringer should check out The Athletic. It's my
Well,
that's
I'm
a new-
I'm a paid subscriber to The Athletic, so
Right, me too.
I mean, it's just like that they're the best in the biz at the current moment.
Emma trying to make up for her opinions on Simmons.
All I said was I didn't hate it as much as other people,
Wow,
and I
we got a
remember some
Pelosi defender and a Simmons defender on the
On
the,
camera, jeez. I'm gonna flip this.
Listen, she had every right to buy those stocks, guys. Come on. Let's continue. And I got to make it clear because I know there's going to be people who harass me for saying that. I'm joking about that one. Comrade Mario. Oh, we did that. The Tucker Carlson clip. John MC Dropout. I would never call Bongino a punk to his face, but that's because punks are cool and he is not. I like that. John MC Dropout. Thank you. Cuck Joe COVID says, I wonder what Ban Dong Gino would say about the 61-year-old white man who dragged the police officer under his car while also hitting with a hammer yesterday in Hutchinson, Minnesota. Somehow the police were able to arrest him without using guns or tasers. I haven't heard about that case, but yeah. Christo says, I don't know about Bongo being a cop, but he was definitely a member of the Secret Service on presidential detail for some time. That might be what Geraldo was talking about.
He was both. He was in NYPD for like 4 years and then was in Secret Service.
All right. Damn. I wish I would have come across Bongino on the force here. 704 area code. Still reeling from the Mindy call, just painfully out of touch and individualist. I have no idea. I just read that one. I don't know why. I have no idea what call they're referring to. Let me just go through here and grab new year, new rear. Sell your house to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman? Who was that again? Who are you quoting? That's what's his face, right? I'm
blanking on his name.
Yeah, me too. I'm blanking on his name too.
Wait,
oh
what?
My God. It's a really famous clip in our circles where this leftist YouTuber completely destroyed Ben Shapiro on that point I brought up earlier, where he said, he literally said on his show, you know, it's not that big of a deal if the rising water levels affect where you live, because, you know, if your house is, you know, gets underwater, you can just sell it and move it somewhere else. H-bomber. Yes. Thank you. Great moment. Great moment.
Damn, that was in his video Climate Denial, a Measured Response by H-Bomber Guy. Guess how many views that has now? It came out a year ago.
It's got to be like 10 million, 20 million. I don't know.
Oh, wow, you're higher than me. 3 million, I'm impressed by.
Oh, no, 3 million is, but I've seen that clip so many times. I bet if you just counted the views for that clip, because that thing's been cut out of that video and spread everywhere. Yeah.
I mean, that was a viral moment before he put it in that video, and then he just owned it with that CGI, basically.
Rank and File says Lex Shapiro was remarkably good. Can you give it to us again? That was very good, Matt.
I can't. It's got to be in the moment.
All right.
It's got to be in the moment. I can't do it. I'm not a dancing monkey.
Wasn't expecting it once you threw me off there. There you go. Aaron is not cool. Emma, the Simmons take is your worst.
The take was that I didn't hate it as much as other people. That's my
I apologize
worst take.
for digging in.
I've had way worse takes than that. I got to be honest.
All right.
I mostly get frustrated with Simmons because I have smart friends that like him, and I'm like, guys, there's just so much better shit out there than Bill Simmons. Like that Rewatchables podcast is the dumbest thing in the world.
I honestly don't think I've ever watched or listened to anything Simmons has done. So I guess I'm lucky there. J-Bags, every time you guys play a Shapiro clip, I think you have it set to 1.5 times speed. You guys ever wonder if underneath all that nasal hate is a pre-natural talent for Migos flow?
No.
Me and Pillow Guy. What were you gonna say, Matt?
He couldn't, stick to a triplet flow.
Me and Pillow Guy. Oh, Mind Pillow Guy. Got it. I get what you're going for there. Referring to the Ben Shapiro hot mic moment, it is a little suspect that he lifted up the camera after he stood up so that his face was in frame as he talked. That being said, it would also be a weird thing to just plant like that.
Right. It's true. Both things are true.
Yeah. I don't know. I know from when I finished the stream, my own stream, like I fix my screen differently to a more comfortable view. Like, you know, I do have my screen set up in a way where I can both look at the screen and look at the camera in a way which I would not normally be on the computer if I wasn't also looking at the camera. Yeah, really cool brought that up. Old Matt, didn't you do a story about Shapiro recently forgetting? Yep. Trumpy Bear, with, I guess this will be the final AM of the day, to pile on Sam even more. The original medicinal marijuana legislation bill from Cali was number 215, not 420. I know this because
damn, I should have smoked 11 minutes ago.
I know this because they used to call the license 215 or 215. I don't know, but I was reading that in my head before I said it, and I just had to laugh because Sam got it completely wrong. If the bill was called something, a number that was completely different, then I don't think 420 came from there.
You know, to be fair to Sam, somebody sent that to me too and was like, I'm surprised you didn't know that. And I frankly didn't even look back into it because it just sounded wrong. And I think Sam just took the bait.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, folks. Well, Champagne Commie says 10:30 a.m. is actually the perfect time to blaze. I don't know. Is that true, Matt?
10:30 a.m.?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Tune into my show tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time, youtube.com/Matt Binder for all the latest on the Matt Gaetz story and how a WWE wrestler turned Florida mayor is wrapped up into the whole situation. I should mention another little teaser here. He was spreading QAnon-esque child trafficking conspiracies, and was at the same time taking money from that guy Greenberg, who was allegedly trafficking young teenage women. So tune in. It should be a great show. And Lek, I know you got a show tonight, right?
Yeah, Cale Brooks and the makers of the Reclaim Idaho documentary talking about Medicaid expansion in Idaho. So check that out tonight, 8 Eastern on Left Reckoning. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, folks.
And Nomiki show coming up right now on YouTube. Well, in 30 minutes on YouTube at 3 p.m. Right. And the rest of the MR crew will see you all tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know.